Hello again, beautiful people. Today I'm going to be a little racist. I know it's that time again. So today I would like to talk about how to predict the future, how to become Nostra Bloody Damus. And how do you do that? Well, if you want to know what the future of America is going to look like, what the next big psyop the government's going to do against you, look at the black community, right? So, for instance, I'm sure you can see the fentanyl epidemic that's taken over America, right? That's ravaged the middle class. It almost looks like when the CIA intentionally introduced crack cocaine into the black community to have it ravage the black community as well. Just look at affirmative action and its repercussions, and then, now that it's been thrown away, we can see that the cultural institutions, the way academia, my lips don't want to work, but academia has fallen because of it, you know. We can look at the Better Societies bull and the way that marriage has fallen and how they did it. And if you look, the government prototypes its offensive strategies against society on black people before it introduces it to the grand majority, right? It's done this repeatedly throughout history. Again, just the examples I've listed there are pretty obvious, like the crack cocaine one being the biggest primary thing that made me think about this and realize this. So if you want to know what the future looks like, look at what's happening in the black community now, and that's what's going to happen to the greater Americas within the next, 10, 20 years. So in the future, mark my words, I'm Nostradamusing this right now. I'm predicting it. I'm seeing it in my mind's eye. There's going to be a Black Lives Matter type movement for white people in greater American society that rampages through it. There's going to be some sort of social justice event like that goes through and gives a bunch of white kids the incentive to go and destroy their own communities, just like what happened with Black Lives Matter. That psyop is coming in the future. Who knows when? They might break it out for the 2024 election next year. They might save it for some other time, but there's going to be another big BLM Marxist psyop that comes, and it's coming at some point in the future. Just like how fentanyl is raging through the country, just like the takeover of academia, just like the Better Societies Act, where, black women were literally given money to divorce their husbands before they went after white families. Like, blow your mind on this. Think about this for a second. Black families at one point were advancing and having stronger familial bonds than white people for a while. Like, in America, in the heart, in what would have been one of the more racist periods, while Jim Crow laws were still on the books, that was happening until we intervened. And the government handled that, the big old Democrats. Speaking of some more racist stuff, I would like to friendly reminder here about eugenics and where Planned Parenthood and abortion came from. Just while we're on the subject, I live in New York. In New York right now, I'll phrase it like this. There's literally a Planned Parenthood on almost every single block in every single black neighborhood. Period. These Planned Parenthoods were strategically placed as population control by Margaret Sanger. That was the point and purpose of them. They've never been taken down, by the way, by the quote-unquote previously racist Democrats that somehow magically swapped position with the Republicans, even though the Democrats did not change their policies. There's been two policy differences between Democrats and Republicans. One of them was abortion, which Democrats were for, Republicans were against. We can see how that's turned out. And the other one would, of course, be gun control. Do you know what the first Jim Crow law was in the United States? Just on a whim, are you aware? So, first of all, the term Jim Crow comes from the minstrel show era, which is where a white guy would put on blackface and pretend to be a black guy in a humiliating fashion for people's entertainment. And one of the more famous tunes from minstrel shows was Jumping Jim Crow, which is where Jim Crow laws come from. The first Jim Crow law was a law limiting firearm access for African Americans, which also happened to be the very first gun control law or any sort of weapon control law in the United States. A Democrat law, which is still, strangely, Democrat policy, and yet the rate, well, who cares? It's racism. Yeah, it's all we need to think about is the evil Republican racists. We don't need to put two and two together here, but, this is more about the black community. And what's pretty funny is all this anti-marriage stuff all started in the black community too. Like, let's be clear here. The brothers seem to be on the ball. They seem to understand these psyops and where they're coming from and the solutions way before white people are. So I'm actually, I know it's crazy, right? But I'm actually looking towards the black community for future solutions to a lot of these issues that are coming up, especially like the Black Lives Matter and the communist question, because they seem to be able, because they're exposed to the psyops much earlier, and they seem to have, no reservations about what's doing in their best interest, unlike white people. They seem to generally have better solutions, like this whole, you know, anti-marriage thing and this whole, passport bros and a lot of these other strategies black people have come up with, because all of these things were basically invented by black people, right? You know, I don't think the ideologies were invented, like the whole MGTOW ideology was invented by black people, but they're definitely one of the first adopters and really understand this stuff a lot better than the average white guy does. Like every single black guy I've ever talked to about, marriage issues automatically just gets it. They're born red pilled or something because they're born into this struggle, whereas white people are generally isolated from it because the CIA isn't using them as a psyop prop, right? Strange. But yeah, it's really crazy. So, if you want a pro tip on how to handle the oncoming apocalypse, just look at what black people are doing to, struggle with these issues before they hit you, because they're dealing with the government's psyops long before you are. Just something to think about here. I'm looking forward to it and looking to see where they're going with this, because they're probably experiencing whatever the next psyop is going to be. It's some secret CIA file that's being ran on them as we speak, So Lord knows what that's going to look like, but it should be exciting. We live in exciting times at least, right? So that's enough. I'm done being racist for now. Maybe.